So, quick little story about the world of real time, because it's going to come up in my conversation for the next 40-odd minutes. But today was the day I had made arrangements to drop a car off for service down in Leaside, and I live north of the city. So, waking up to hear that the Don Valley was closed and all the traffic woes was not a great start to the day. But I said, fine, I'll get up early, get down there, get the car done, and get up here in time. So I got there in time. My mechanic guy was in there, sitting behind his computer with a very glum-looking face on. And I said, Sean, he's a big happy guy. He goes, what's the big deal? Why the sad face? And he goes, come look. So I came around and he's looking at a video, City 24 video with the big flood and the Don Valley's closed and there's cars stuck in the middle, and there's one in particular to zeroing in on with a young fellow sitting on the roof of his car, water up to the windows, having a smoke. I went, wow, can you believe that? I mean, that kid's pretty calm. He goes, yeah, that's my kid. So now I understand. And he said, I'm not even worried about the kid. The car looks like it's a write-off, so it's going to be a bad day for the insurance world. So that's real time, right? Looking at your kid on top of the car, realizing your day's probably going to go downhill from there. All right, so real time will come up a lot in the next little bit. I'm going to talk about the empowered customer. One of the reasons they're so empowered is because we're increasingly living in a real-time world. I learned yesterday that there's too much in here to really squeeze into what I thought was 55 minutes, but it turns out it's more like 40. But that's fine. I'm going to move a little faster at the front end where we're talking about some of the global insurance trends. I mean, what's happening globally is largely happening here. Speeding things up here sometimes. Want to get into the current Ontario market dynamics as much as I can. As some of you know, we do the market study for the IBAO. I'm not really here in IBAO business, so I can't give you all the ins and outs, but as members, those of you that are, you are entitled to see that information, and you will have opportunities to see it because it's very interesting. But I'll give you a sense of how the Ontario market is progressing and evolving. And then what's really behind this market share change? Why are customers making different decisions and ending up at different places? And most importantly, that's where I want to have sort of 10 minutes at the back end. What can you do about it? And the good news is there's lots you can do about it, and there's increasingly more and more help for you to make those changes, which Wendy's already talked about. So let's talk sort of very briefly about these global trends. And it's funny, as I started doing these a few years ago, I was using consumer expectations are changing. So it was the beginning of, well, I've put ED at the back of everything now. It's happened. They've changed so much as to be almost unrecognizable from what they were like 10 or 15 years ago. You know, the idea of looking for experts, tell me what I need, to now everybody's an expert because you can go online and everything you read on the internet's true, right? So, you know, you can figure it all out. I mean, I'm sure people are going to start doing their own at-home surgery because somebody somewhere has shown how to do your own appendectomy. So that's changing what people think they know and starts to confuse things. We're certainly living in a fast, real-time, I need it, want it now. That's just getting worse by the generation. Any of you with Y-gens like I've got will know that. And so real-time is the new normal. That is what we are expecting. That's what we see in other places. And if you haven't heard it already, I mean, guys, your industry is no different. That is the expectation ultimately. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but soon enough. And you know, when people do talk to customers increasingly, they say, hey, I know even if you're a call center, you got my file up there. And if you're not getting the right answer from the person you're talking to, the call center, we all know what to do next. I'd like to speak to your supervisor. And things usually change from there. So they want to know that you're talking to somebody that's got answers, and they want everything to work. That's the expectation. And as a result of the expectations changing, consumer behavior has changed. One of the most dramatic things that you guys need to be aware of is that the US figure, and it's got to be higher in Canada, is 80% of customers are starting their insurance purchase process online. That's where they're starting. That's where we start most stuff. Insurance is no different, maybe even a little higher. And so whether you know it or not, they are finding out. Some people are saying, I'd rather deal with somebody local. I'll look a little harder to see who's in my area, and they will click on your website. And what happens from there? We'll talk about that a little later, certainly in digital marketing. But know that it's happening. And of course, we're connected. We hear about things. How do we hear about things these days? What's word of mouth in 2013? It's Facebook, right? It's social media. It's what a friend of a friend of a friend said, right? That's how we hear about things. And Y generation will absolutely take a friend of a friend of a friend's opinion or experience ahead of an expert every time. So that's how they hear and learn. And mobile is where all the exponential growth is going. Already more mobile phone numbers in the world than people. That happened this year. And so people are saying, hey, have 1, 2, 3 lines, why not? Everything's going to be mobile probably in the next 5 to 10 years. That's the future. And so the world has gone digital. That's the reality. That's where analog is pretty much gone. People expect interaction choices. We talked about real-time, 24/7 mobile. Most consumers are using at least 3 interaction points. Many are using more, up to 5+. And certainly, again, with mobile apps, you're going to have it in your pocket. You're going to click on it, and the world should be there. And of course, social media. It's already come up. That's certainly not going to go away anytime fast. There will be lots of new sites coming up, and what's amazing is how fast that whole world is changing. The 17% there at the bottom, that is the amount of time this year, that percentage of total computer time that you spend. So think of all the time you spend on a computer, wherever you are, work, home, play. 17% of that time on average is being spent just on Facebook, if you can imagine. 17%. And apparently the young kids are basically starting to swear off Facebook now. They're saying, oh, it's passé, it's done. They're on to other things. And that will continue to happen. Whereas all the growth with Facebook, us folks, right, with a little more time going, oh yeah, this isn't so bad, you can do this, right? And the grandparents, they love it because they get to see pictures. Now, when their grandkids don't use it anymore, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But right now, big deal, social care, right? That's a new thing. People are complaining about things online, Twitter, whatever. It's being dealt with through Twitter. And big companies are going, hey, this is quick, this is easy. Not only can we fix it, we can tell the world we fixed it. That's called free advertising. So that's what's happening. Social TV, same thing. So lots of trends coming there, and that's part of the world that we're living in. And yet, personal relationships still matter. IBM did a huge global study last year, just in insurance, and you'll be happy to know that people in the world, they still want some sort of a personal relationship. The question is, what defines personal relationship these days? Is it sit down, shake hands, have a cup of coffee? Based on what we're talking about, probably not. And also, by the way, at the bottom there, it's cut off here a little bit here, but personal relationship is also about making sure you know who I am, that you're putting forward the right solutions, that they're fresh, that they're better than, you're anticipating my future needs, those sorts of things. The trusted piece still matters, but you're not going to be able to, in many cases, achieve that trust with a look in the eye. You will never meet people that you potentially will be very connected with. So personal relationship still matters. Mass customization is one of the ways you do that. Technology will now allow you to create systems that makes it look like each customer has something unique going on. And they'll feel that, and that's what you want. But the reality is you can't afford to spend the time, and you don't have to spend the time to create all that. It can get done for you. So personal relationships still matter. Wrap this part up. Empowered customers are absolutely changing the game. For the longest time, you guys could say, hey, insurance is complicated, we're the experts, knowledgeable professional, blah, 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 leave it to us. Well, these days, they're not going to leave it to you. They're going to talk to other people, they're seeing, they're hearing, and they will start they're hyper-informed, so they're going to be making their own decisions. They still want your involvement, but it will be a different kind of involvement. If they're not happy, they're going to make a point of making sure not only you know, but a bunch of other people as well. So the amplifier effect will be there. That said, lots more opportunity for you to get engaged. You now have multiple dimensions to connect and get engaged with your customers that you didn't have even 10 years ago, but you're going to have to take advantage of it, especially with the more products, channel alternatives are out there. And so the real-time interactive relationship, personal, that's becoming a table stake. That is what the expectation is. That's what you guys are going to have to deliver And we'll come back to brand power being an important part of that. And of course, so the personal relationship criteria are changing. Like it or not, the internet has changed pretty much everything. It's the thread that goes through all the different changes. Consumers expect you to have a customer-focused model, and they expect it to be new, meaningful, different. That's just part of what they expect to see. Needs to be relevant, and you're going to have to find new ways to make insurance relevant. And this last piece, probably one of the most important, and we'll talk about it more in the connection piece in the breakout section. But customers will only feel connected when you are connecting on their terms. Saying, hey, pick up the phone, let's have a chat. There's a significant portion there, not just youngsters, that say, I don't want to talk to you on the phone. I may not even want an email. A text me, I may want to do a chat. Now, that said, some still will, some will want to come for a visit. But until you understand how your customers want to connect with you and figure out how to do that well, they will not feel connected. And that's going to be your challenge. Connected customers at the bottom there are engaged customers. It's that simple, and I'll be talking about that in more detail. So, those trends are shaping the way the world is changing in every other industry, and insurance is now basically catching up. So, like it or not, you've got to take those things into consideration. So with Ontario, all right, I'm just going to give you the highlights of some of the things that are actually happening right here in our own backyard. We know about demographic shifts, I'll come back to that, changing consumer expectations, changing consumer behaviors we talked about. Your business model, right, really hasn't changed that much in the last 100 years, and that's going to have to change. We know about the competition. The bottom line is future success for you folks, any industry, insurance is no different. You have to understand what drives consumer choice. Why are they choosing to stay with you? Why are they choosing to move or choose another channel? And that knowledge, I'm happy to say, we can share with you. Now, there's no numbers here, because I'm really not allowed to give the specifics in a general discussion like this, but you'll get a sense, and those of you, I've got a couple of BBIC brokers beyond best in class, which I'll talk a bit about at the end. We've got Megan here from Hartwell and Peter from Cornerstone. So any IBO member gets to see this, and BBIC, we spend a lot of time talking about what's going on in the Ontario market. 1980 is the good old days, right? 3/4 of the market belonged to brokers, and you shared it at that point with a sort of a happy truce with your agents. Fast forward to 2010, and that starts to change pretty dramatically. Big change then. That was when we did our second market studies. We looked at the financial institutions and the directs. They were the big new competition as being largely the same. And they were starting to account for about 25% of the market. What was interesting is the agent hadn't changed. And we now go to 2013, the agent's share still hasn't changed. There's some good reasons for that. I won't get into it too much today. But the bottom line is most of the shrinking is going on the broker share, and you guys are now somewhere under 50% of share. And the big change really, even in the last 3 years, has been the directs have been growing faster than the financial institutions, but we're pretty convinced that the financial institutions are okay with that. They're growing more slowly and far more deliberately. And ultimately, the big message here, when we talk a little bit more about it, is to pay attention to what they're doing and why they're doing it. So for sure, you guys are the ones that are being targeted share-wise. That said, Ontario, Canada has still the largest percentage of broker intermediated business in the world. This is the last broker market standing with anywhere close to 50%. All the other major markets have fallen to, I think the lowest is Australia at around 12 or 14 or 15%. So you guys still have managed to hold on to that share. But as you're going to see, if you don't pay some pretty significant attention and start thinking about how you're going to hold on to it harder, there's an awful lot of people who are committed to trying to take it away. So there's a lot of people watching to say, well, I wonder what they're going to do up there in Canada. So I'm going to talk about 3 themes and sort of 9 factors very briefly in terms of what is driving this change. Why is there so much competition? Why are you feeling that you're under siege? And then we'll talk about what you can do about it. We'll talk about the changing consumer landscape. So I've given you some hints with the global trends. We'll come back to that. And then the changing market. The reality is the market is much different now, the insurance market specifically, than what it looked like even 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago. And then we're going to talk a little bit about insurance providers and the solutions, what I'm calling inertia. And there's an asterisk there because I can already say that's starting to change. But for the longest time, insurance products like innovation, like you don't really need to do that, right? It is what it is. So we'll talk about those three things and then figure out what do you do about it. So changing consumer landscape. So let's just sort of hit the high points here. So back to the changing consumer expectations. These are the things your customers expect. We frankly expect it wherever we go. We expect that we're in a personalized relationship. I'm giving you money, you know things about me. I want you to know who I am. I need you to be accessible. I'm busy, I'm all over the place, I'm mobile. I need to get to you when and where and how I want. So 9 to 5 on the phone, leave a message, that's so yesterday, that's so analog. And there's whole groups of the population now that will simply not accept that. So it doesn't mean you have to have a call center. It doesn't mean you have to be open 24/7. It's amazing how you can fake that. So you have to start thinking about it. It's real time increasingly. I just got a nice little letter from my friends at Hydro One. We live out in the country a little bit. And they've spent a bunch of money, our taxpayers' money, putting in these meters that let them actually pay attention to how much power I'm using, I guess by the second. So somebody in the accounting finally figured out, we still bill these people 30 days later. Why do we do that? Oh, well, because the meter readers have to go out. Well, we don't have those people anymore. So I went, oh, you're kidding. We can bill them in real time. And we'll just grab those 30 days back. So all of a sudden, they're going to have $1.5 billion on their book because we're now paying immediately. Why wait 30 days? That's real time in a sort of negative way, but that's the world we live in. It's got to be simple. Increasingly, don't want it to be overly complicated. They don't want to hear that it's complicated, even if it is. You tell them it's simple and figure out how to make it look simple. And it needs to be proactive. Think ahead, think forward, what's happening? Tell me what I can do to be one step ahead. That's the world we live in. So that's the kind of general expectations you guys need to be. And just, even if we're older, us boomers are starting to be affected by these things. So just because we're old and have gray hair doesn't mean we don't care about these things. Now, this slide here, some of you have seen it before, arguably one of the most important slides I'm going to show you. It will come up again in a minute. The bottom line is these 6 benefit areas drive engagement. This is what your broker customers care about, but interestingly enough, it's also what most of the market cares about. The better you do these things, the more engaged your customers are going to be. So personal, easy, confidence, innovation. Now those top 4, and then collaboration, respect. Easy and innovation, cut to the chase. Those are not your strong points. We know that, but they matter to customers. Confidence and personal connection, arguably, you should be very good at it. The question is, are you? And I can tell you some brokers are outstanding, others not so much. Collaboration, respect, same thing. It depends. You have the ability. The question is, are you? And I'll answer that for you in a minute. These things matter. And the better you do them, the more engaged your customers are going to be. What's interesting is a major insurance company, the biggest, so I guess I just said who it is.
Does it start with I?
I think it does, as a matter of fact. They have their new tagline that they're advertising is, what matters to you matters to us. That is not a coincidence. They know this too. And they didn't have to, they paid lots of dough to find out what we know as well. And so they're getting that message out. That's what the message you have to get out to your customers as well. Changing consumer behavior. So all of this expectation. So now we are actually doing things differently. And what's so funny is we're now doing things for ourselves and paying more, and we're happy about it. Can you imagine? Air Canada people must be, can you believe it? People actually make their own reservations, and we don't have to pay the commissions anymore, and they make the changes and all that sort of stuff. They do it all by themselves. It's amazing. The banks, same thing. Like they help themselves. How much better can it get? And we'd prefer to do that. So think about it. Why can't it be that way in insurance? I forget the regulation stuff, I know, but the reality is there's things that people can do that you're doing right now, and they'd be thrilled to do it. So start thinking about that. We know about mobile, it's happening, it's here. Multimodal is the reality. Wherever, however, the social media we've talked about, and the fact that these social media preferences will change rapidly. So you can't attach your strategy to a social media site. Don't go and say, okay, Facebook is where it's at, 70%, that's it. Because you know what? Who knows, a couple of years from now, Facebook may be gone. Social media is not going. So you have to figure out a strategy that gets to your customers the way that you need to get to them and target customers. And the whole idea of more and more we will hear from people that are actually using the product or have used the service, as opposed to, and whether you want to or not, good, bad, or indifferent. So you just have to take that as a fact of doing business. Now a little advertorial for the product that we deliver to brokers that we designed specifically for the insurance industry. I'm happy to say this is a product that keeps evolving. Started with really just a performance metric 10 odd years ago. That's where we started with Wendy and Precept and a few other early adopters. It's evolved slowly. If we had known 15 years ago, 20 years ago when we first came into the insurance industry, it would take this long, right, to actually get the change going. We might have picked a different industry. But the good news is, I mean, the traction is there. If you are a broker, there is a score out of 100 that tells you how engaged your customers are. You should know that score. That little chart at the bottom gives you 6 different categories, from the bottom, where you're in real trouble, significant risk, to the top, where you have very low risk. And I can tell you, of the hundreds of brokers now, many hundreds in Ontario that have used this over the last few years, and RSA, Aviva, Intact have all sponsored brokers and sponsored this program, so they're still, will occasionally fork out the dough or part of it on your behalf to get you started. So brokers now know, where are you out of 100? Are you at the top, or are you at the bottom, or somewhere in between? In Ontario, we run the full gamut. Actually, that's not true. Happily, there's nobody in the bottom category. But it's a bell curve, and the majority are somewhere in the middle. So if that number is low, your customers are less engaged. If it's high, then they're more engaged. Point is, if you don't know, then you're already in trouble. All right. So, and of course, you can find out more about that through me, or I think we've got a little sheet in your handout. So, love to talk to you about it afterwards. Changing market landscape, well, don't have to spend too much time on the demographics. We know how much they're changing. The boomers, certainly the diversity, especially here in Ontario, that's where it all starts. I think 1 in 5 now, 20% of Canadians were not born here, right? So that's a significant number. And generationally, XY, millennials, we know they're all different. And we know you guys have some issues around products for some of these new groups. But if us boomers, which is where most of your customers are going to be retiring and divesting assets, where's all the growth coming from? And what are you doing to make sure that you're ready for that? So got to be aware of the demographics. And then just talk very briefly, I'm not going to go into detail, but this whole idea of choice focusing on the brokers, the reality is the folks that love you guys the most are much like me, right? We're older, we're typically, it's a little bit more of a rural. We've been through school, we love our assets, and we've been in Canada a long time, and we're white, right? So that's the profile, and then the like is not much different, other than there might be something missing. And you do have a group of customers that love you. So that's the good news. They absolutely think you walk on water for whatever reason. The bad news is it's only about 20 to 25% of your population. The rest fall into the others, and basically the indifferent and don't like, depending on, it can be, and this is where they get, it can be upwards of 50% are just saying, you know what, I've already got a foot out the door, and nothing against them, I'm just ambivalent. There's nothing to make me go yet, but nothing to make me stay. So you're going to have to start paying attention to that and figure out. And really, the main piece here is just looking at these market dynamics. The playing field, because of the growth and because of the boomers, it's actually tilting away from you guys a bit, right? Because of the young people, immigrants, aging population, urbanization. So you got to figure out a way to deal with that. That's just a reality of demographics. You can't, it's not your fault, but you got to be aware of it and do something about it. And of course, the competitive landscape is the other thing that's changed hugely. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, there was you and agents. Well, now there's a whole new gamut of folks, and it keeps getting bigger. And there's people around the world that are still saying, hey, I think there's room for another insurance company in Canada, maybe. So you absolutely have to be paying attention to this. and saying, what do we do about that to make sure that we can defend our part of the share. And the whole idea of maturing and commoditization. In the US, a significant portion of the direct writers are pushing the commoditization. Why? Because they're saying, hey, we have a model that promotes a lower price, so we want to really get, it's all the same, pick us, save some money. Well, commoditization used to be kind of a bad word because all that mattered was price. Till the Starbucks and Tim Hortons of the world said, wait a minute, we can take a product like coffee and we can make it different. We can make it unique. And so why can you not do that with insurance? And indeed you can. And of course, the digital world, we've talked about how much that's changed, and that's really the new marketing reality that you guys are working in, and we'll talk about that in the next session. So the last little piece here is this insurance provider, so the resistance to change solution. That's why we're here. That's why Orbit exists. And that's why we're here. That's why we're building the tools. That's why Beyond Best in Class exists. To try and kickstart that change. You see those 7 benefit bullets. The cost one really is not, doesn't really play as long as you're fair. Brokers don't rate number 1 in any of those 6 areas in Ontario. None of them. Now you're not necessarily at the bottom, but you're not at the top in any of them. Now that's as a group. Individually, I can tell you there's some brokers that absolutely are. But I can tell you the majority, because that's what's driving. So when it comes to performance, you guys aren't where you need to be. You need to be leaders in at least some of those, if not all of them. So that's one of the big wake-up calls. And the only way to know for sure is when you're looking at your own numbers, then there's nowhere to hide, and that's the whole point of it. We track this, individual broker, aggregate, for all of Ontario. And the other thing we found out is year over year, there's actually been a tiny amount of slippage. So from 2011 to 2012, it's minuscule, but because the sample size are so large, many, many thousands of customers, it's enough to be statistically significant. So that's something that you want to be worried about, is that there's a little bit of slippage, and part of it is that customer expectations, as we talked about, are going up. They want more. So just being consistent isn't going to cut it. A little plug for BBIC, happily, they're actually outperforming the market, and there's about 50 of you out there in Ontario right now, so that's good news. And the technological barriers, I mean, we've talked about those, but increasingly, you know what, they're not there anymore. They're no longer an excuse, because there's ways around them. One of the reasons we're here today is to prove how technology can bring us all together. The BMS vendors are part of it, IBM, the computer companies. So happily, those are no longer barriers, but historically they've gotten in the way, and we can't let them do that anymore. I talk about the boiling the frog scenario, and some people go, ew, but how am I doing? 10 minutes? Okay, good. Put a frog in a pot of cold water and he's happy, and turn the heat up slowly. He won't try and get out because it doesn't notice a temperature change. I think there's been some of that going on in this industry, because things are kind of okay, they go up, they go down, but so far so good. And then all of a sudden one day the frog realizes he's dinner, right? So, you know, that's the issue here, is there a tipping point? And we don't know for sure, but I think you want to be thinking about that frog sometimes. And so then the lack of product and service innovation, again, it's like insurance. Who gets excited about insurance? It is what it is. You know, like, does somebody get up in the morning and say, I think I'll buy some more insurance today, I wonder who will sell me some? I mean, nobody says that, right? Really. But what have we all been hearing about the last couple of weeks? What's sorry? Adjusto, right? Adjusto, telematics. Let us save you 25%. By the way, in case you don't know, the maximum that they're going to save in the next 12 to 18 months is 5%. So, because they don't have any data. They need the data first. But the fact of the matter is, why is it resonating with people? Do you remember one of those benefit bullets? What was it? Innovation. They go, oh, wait a minute. Somebody's doing something different, and they want to give me my money back. Until you find out how you drive, where you drive, when you drive, that's another story. But it sounds cool, doesn't it? Sounds like innovation. So, and it is innovative. So that's the play. Even they say, you know, stick with us for 18 months and we'll see. Can you think of a reason why brokers might want to be involved in that whole customer data situation? Can you think of a better group of people who might want to pay attention and be custodians of that data? Who owns that data, by the way? Should it be the customer? Should it be the insurance company? I can tell you what I would think about that. So what a great opportunity if you make hay. Okay, so talked about Adjusto. Mercedes introduced the first car that will drive itself on the expressways. Not coming, not Jetsons, not a few years. It's coming, it's built, and it's being delivered in the next couple of months. So it will actually drive itself on an expressway. So that could solve all sorts of problems in the next few years, but that's the future. And again, you guys need to be aware of that. And the whole idea of that data that the car knows, the customer knows, all that sort of stuff. What are you going to do with it? All right, and there is certainly new signs of collaboration. That's why we're here, and that's exciting. The insurance companies are starting to work closer together, fraud prevention. They're working with the IBO. Part of my mission is collaboration with brokers, get you guys, you are all on the same team. The competition is not in this room. The competition we know is elsewhere. All right, so point is, in Ontario right now, organizations, brokers, competition, insurance companies, direct writers, they are already figuring out how to use technology, innovation, these things to make a difference. And I'm here to tell you that if you as brokers don't figure out how to make a significant investment and start to make some of the changes to deal with everything I've just talked about, you will be left behind. It's not a question of if, just when. So the good news is there's some things you can do about it. Let's talk for the next couple of minutes and wrap this up. So what about that changing consumer landscape? Can you do anything about that? Not really. It's going to happen with or without you, but you can absolutely do some things to help you be aware of it and respond to it. So for sure by now you get the point. We think you should understand your customers, know who they are, know how they think, know what they want. It's a starting point. You've already got them. You've been taking their money for a while. Now understand how you're going to keep them there and keep taking their money. Reconnect, right? We already know they don't want to connect with you in the traditional ways increasingly, especially with some of the new customers coming on. So you're going to have to find new ways to reconnect. It's doable. It's being done. And again, with the digital marketing and connection piece I'll talk about later, you'll figure out there's things you can do right now. And then think about future customers. Where are they going to come from? Absolutely have to figure out how you're going to start to attract some of those folks to replace us aging folks. Because the reality is most of you have boomers, significant portion of your customers are boomers. So as we move on to the great beyond, what are you going to do to replace us? So from a changing consumer landscape, you need to get your head around all those things. And this is, again, understanding your customer metrics is a piece of that puzzle. Also want to mention, IBAO is creating with some input from us, and I actually will be facilitating a connection workshop for brokers. It will be a sequel, Understanding the 21st Century from last year. Now it's like, how do we connect? And there'll be 4 tools specifically to help you reconnect with customers in the 21st century, like we've been talking about. So that will be coming later in June and through the summer and the fall. And in terms of target market selection, just think about where will you find your future customers? And part of it's geography, part of it, who do we want to be? You don't want to be all things to all people. So do we want to go after young folks? Do we want to go after new Canadians? Do we want to go after other types of industries or special needs? Think about that. Figure out how you're going to be different, how you're going to be unique. The market landscape, well, the digital marketing, that for sure is a new buzzword. You're going to hear a lot about that starting today and in the future. You've all had marketing strategies of some sort in the past, but they're analog. They're based on print, they're based on old world media, and we now know that the new world is digital. So you're going to have a marketing approach to support that. You're going to have to build your brokerage brand in some different ways. You're going to have to figure out how you're going to be unique and different. If insurance is sort of at 50,000 feet a commodity, how can you make sure it's not a commodity in your community with your customers? And you got to figure out how to outperform the competition. Some of them are bigger and they have more money, but that doesn't mean that they're better. So you're going to have to figure out what matters to our customers and how can we be different and better. And so in terms of the digital marketing, just very quickly, the market, the message, the media, you're going to have to start spending some time thinking about, who are we talking to? What are you going to say? How are you going to deliver that message? So when you think about that, who are you talking to? You know what? Sorry, I want to go back just to, okay, so we'll go to the message. Think about that. What is your brand story? Brand isn't the tagline, and some of you have that. It's who you are. What really, what's relevant, what's different, what's compelling. You can make insurance compelling, you can make it fun, but you're going to have to start thinking about that. So, and make sure it resonates. So spending some time on the message and making sure that you absolutely have an understanding of what your customers are thinking. As far as the insurance provider solution and inertia piece, I mean, the fact that you guys are all here working together proves that collaboration can actually happen. And you get much more done when this starts to happen. It's just too bad. We couldn't have started about 30 years ago, right? And in fact, it got tried, but it didn't make it. So collaborate and innovate, do it much easier as a group. And I cannot emphasize that enough in terms of looking to your fellow broker, looking to groups like this, looking to the association. If you're not on a committee or a working group, get on one. You will learn, you'll get much more out of that than you'll ever put into it. And the same goes with demonstrating leadership. You're going to have to start thinking about the broker of tomorrow and what you're going to look like 5 and 10 years ago. I mean, you think about entrepreneurship. Somebody told me a long time ago, the only difference between a successful entrepreneur and one that fails is the number of times they pick themselves up and try again. And risk is not something that brokers tend to think about a lot because you're in the risk-averse business. But the reality is you have to start taking some chances. You have to start demonstrating some innovation, start to lead, start trying something. What's the worst that can happen? Didn't work, so try something else. So you're going to have to sort of work through this. And last little plug here for Beyond Best in Class. That is a program that came out of looking at all this market research and going, wow, things are changing. We got to figure out how can we get some brokers to really start to kickstart that change. It's about transformational change. If you just want to get a little bit better, a little bit different, don't come. If you want to turn your brokerage on their head and really start thinking about how we're really going to reinvent our brokerage and this business, then you should think about signing up. Customer metrics is all about it. So we've had about 50 odd brokers by the end of this year through 100 people, because you got to bring at least one other folk. And it's 5 days, 3-day workshop and 2-day workshop. So it's roll up your sleeves, it's work hard, but at the end of it, I pretty much guarantee you will look at your business differently. So that's there for you through the IBO. And just to wrap up, Broker Tomorrow, I mean, look ahead. So yeah, you're in a complex business and it's a complex world. Embrace it and figure out how you're going to beat it. Start thinking about the long term. Putting one foot in front of the other is not going to get you where you go anymore. You're one of those businesses where that worked for a long time, but it's not going to anymore. And embrace that concept of transformational change and say, why not? Why not just do something completely different and see where it gets us? Our buddy Wayne Gretzky still, I mean, he will go down in history, has gone down in history, say, I go to where the puck's going to be. So look ahead, look at your community, what's there for you down the road. A couple of points here. You guys have a head start, right? You have expertise, you understand the business, you understand what's going on. You have this amazing customer base that's already there. But you're going to have to go back and figure out how to reconnect. And you've got a future to look forward to. And people do tell people, they talk to people, they do it differently now. But the reality is that message still gets out there, and you guys can make a difference. So parting thoughts here. Pace of change isn't going to slow down, folks. It's probably just going to speed up. So whatever's happened so far, there's going to be more to follow. And the question is a tipping point coming or not? We hope not. The only reason that there won't be a tipping point where brokers all of a sudden say, wow, you know, we went to 50 to 25 just like the UK and Australia, is because you guys have made a difference and prevented that from happening. Superior delivery of those benefits we talked about means superior engagement. That simple. Better job you do, the more likely your customers are going to come and stay. And the Canadian financial institutions, I believe, are our competitors to watch. They deal with their customers every day in a whole bunch of different ways. They've got an advantage over you because they're constantly in touch, constantly things going on. They're building that big brand. It's like, you know, I've already got this with them, that with them. I go check my money online every day. Why not a little insurance while I'm at it, right? So you have to counter that with your own way of connecting and saying, no, I want to stay with my broker. Last point here is brokers are doing it now, right here in Ontario. Some in this room. They are absolutely making the changes. They are being successful, and they are meeting these changes head on, and it's hitting their bottom line in a positive way. So it's already doable. So I wish you guys best of luck. I got this from, I think it was from Howard Schultz's book on Starbucks. The future belongs to those that are not afraid to get their hands dirty. You guys are going to have to roll up your sleeves But I'm as convinced as anybody that it's doable. And I'd like to be standing up here 5 years from now saying, hey, we're still the only market in the world that managed to hold on to 50% share. So good luck, and for the rest of the day, thank you for your time today.